Hi, y'all. I'm Brenda with Blessings and Bread. Welcome to my kitchen. Today, I'm going to make my famous carrot cake. And I say it's famous, but basically it's just famous with me. There are many people in this area that live around or go to my church who love this cake. They love it every time I bring it to the church socials, and they also even sometimes ask me to make one for them. So it's not really famous except with me, but maybe after today it will become famous on YouTube. Who knows? So I'm going to show you, though, the secret that it's so easy. This is one of the easiest cakes that I make, and that's the secret. It's easy and it's delicious. So let's get started. The very first thing I always do is, before I even start to make the cake, I prepare my pans. I bake this carrot cake in 3 9-inch pans. And again, I'm using my homemade pan release to spread and prepare the pan. This homemade pan release is just equal parts of a shortening, vegetable oil, and flour that's been mixed together. And I love making this up. It's so much easier than trying to grease a pan and then dust it with flour. So I really prefer this method, and I think my cakes come out better too. And I could buy the spray, but this is much cheaper to make. And then I still always kind of put a little dab in the middle, but if you'll notice, I only did the sides, and that's because I always use a piece of parchment paper. Now, you can buy regular parchment paper and cut your own circles, but a long time ago, I figured out it was so much easier just to buy these circles. They're already pre-cut, and they fit in there perfectly, and they come up just a little bit on the edges, so that keeps it from sticking right in the edges. This is a very sticky cake, and if I ever make a cake, this might be one that would stick in the pan. So be sure you prepare your pans well. All right, so I'm going to set the pans aside, and I'm going to get my bowl. This recipe, I said it was easy. It's not made even with a mixer. We do not need a mixer to make this. So we're going to start, though, by combining the dry ingredients. And I'm going to start with 2 cups of sugar and then 2 cups of flour. And then the other dry ingredients are 2 teaspoons of baking soda. And, you know, most recipes just call for 1, but this one calls for 2. 2 teaspoons of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Oh, I take that back. I'm sorry, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And those are the dry ingredients. So now we just need to sift those together. Again, you can mix them together with a fork or a wire whisk, but I like to sift mine. So that was really, so far, getting started off very simple. A lot of people say, oh, I can't bake. If you can read, you can do that. If you can read and follow directions, you can do this. I say people who say, oh, I can't bake, don't want to bake. Because I agree there might be some things that are hard, but anybody can make this cake. Anybody. All right, now I'm going to add 1.5 cups of oil. So the fat in this particular cake is oil. And I think I have a bigger spoon here to stir with. So I'm just going to stir those together well till they all come together well. My dogs can never decide whether they want to be inside or outside. It seems like it's constant. So one barked a while ago to go outside, and now she wants to bark to come inside, but she's just going to get to bark. I hope you can't hear it. She's at the back door barking. All right. All right. So just super easy. Now, the next thing is to add the eggs. And we're going to beat the 4 eggs in, but we're going to do each egg one at a time and then stir that in really well or beat it in and then add the next one. So we'll do these one at a time. I don't know if you can see, but as I add these eggs, it's really getting thicker. So the more I add, the little bit more muscle it takes to beat that egg in. All right, now all of them are mixed in. So we've got that done. That did take a little bit of muscle. And I will say that once I did try to make this in my mixer, and I was not as pleased with the texture of that cake. So this is the way I recommend making it, is by stirring those or beating those eggs in by hand. But like I said, it takes a little bit of muscle to get that done. All right, now that the eggs are in, the only other thing I have to do is just stir in 3 cups of carrots. Now, I've already prepared the carrots, and a trick that I really think might be one of the things that makes my carrot cake a little bit different is when I measure my carrots, I pack them down. So my cake ends up with a lot of carrots in them. I've grated them on my food processor, but you could also grate them by hand. But I think probably with the food processor, they're probably a little finer than a hand grater might grate them. So these have been done on my food processor. And again, I pack them down in there. So I have a solid 3 cups of carrots. This to me is the hardest part. Grating the carrots, peeling and grating the carrots to me is the only difficult part of this cake. And then I'm just going to stir all the carrots in. And what happens is it's going to make that a little juicier. The carrots are part of where the moisture comes in. It's what makes that cake really moist. And by the time this cake is done, if you've never had carrot cake, which I couldn't imagine someone who hasn't had carrot cake before, but if you've never had carrot cake, you cannot even tell these carrots are in the cake. Once they're done, they've just kind of cooked in. I mean, sometimes I can see them a little bit maybe, but you don't know they're in there when you're eating it. All right, I think that's it. So it is a very thick cake batter. When it's done, it's fairly thick. All right, now I'm ready to put it into my pans. And this is where I probably get a little over particular or over, not perfectionism, but I try to get this as perfect as possible. Sometimes I get carried away with that. But I have my scale. When I'm making a 3-layer cake, you want every layer to be equal. So I use my little scale, and I like to use the kilograms setting here. So, and then once I set my pan on my scale, I will be able to hit the zero, and it'll zero it out. So basically, it's now removed the weight of this pan. So now when I put this on here and pour this in, it's only weighing what I pour into the pan. And I kind of know from past experience that it should take about 500 grams, and but usually I've got about 450 in there, so I'm gonna, or 460. I'm gonna stop at 460 and get 460 and all of them, and then go from there. All right, and so once I set that on there, it's still zeroed out, so I can just put 460. That one went to 470. Ooh, 490. I might be okay at 490, so we'll see in the end. And if I put 490 in this one, let's see, do I have enough for that? Not sure I'm going to. No, I'm not. So the one that's got 490 in it, whoop, I just hit 490. But let's just see. So I have two with 490. This was the one that was 460. Let's see if I can scrape enough out of this bowl to get it to 490. Maybe I can. Oh, I did. Perfect. 490 grams. That doesn't happen that easy that often. This one actually is 491, but I think one kilogram or 1 gram won't matter. It's 1 gram. All right, so now I'm just going to stagger these in my oven. We're going to bake at 350, and because my oven is small enough that I can't get them all on the same level, I'll have one on the middle level and then two above it, and then we'll probably rotate one of them during the baking process. All right, I'm going to bake these, and then we'll come back and ice them with some delicious cream cheese frosting. Once your cake is done, and I ended up cooking these for 25 minutes. The recipe calls for 25 to 30, but mine were done at 25. And I'm going to let them rest in the pan for 10 minutes, and that's important. And then now I am still going to have to go around the edge of that pan with a butter knife or a thin spatula. But this is a very sticky recipe, so I just always go around and around several times to make sure I know that edge is going to come out. Now, because we put the parchment paper down, it almost always comes out fine, but I do have to, sometimes the edges will stick. So even after I use my pan release really well. So that one fell right through, flipped it over, and then I peel off carefully around the edges, because I get this all up carefully off the edges, and then it peels right off the bottom. But then I always make a quick flip so it's back right side up to finish cooling. And I'm going to do this to all three of the cakes. And then when the cakes are completely cooled, we'll come back and frost them with cream cheese frosting. Well, now the cakes are out of the oven. They're completely cool. And in the meantime, I've made a recipe and a half of my cream cheese frosting. And I did put nuts in it. They're optional, but this is where I put the nuts. I don't put the nuts in the cake, but I put the chopped nuts in the frosting. And be sure and toast them before you put them into the frosting. So this is a recipe and a half. And I've made a video of my cream cheese frosting, and it will be linked at the end of this video. You'll be able to find that. And just be sure, if you're doing a 3-layer cake, I like to have a recipe and a half of the cream cheese frosting. All right, let's get busy making this cake beautiful. To begin with our first layer, before I put my first layer down, I'm just going to take a little bit of frosting and smear it right in the middle of that cake board. and this will help keep the bottom layer in place. So, and then I'm going to flip my cake off of the tray, and I'm going to put it cake side up, and then I want to check to make sure it's level. And then to do that, I always get down level with it, and it has a little bit of a hump, not much, but just to get it perfectly level, I'm going to cut just a little off the top. And another reason I really cut a little off the top is so then Rod can have a little bit of carrot cake, but it also makes the cake level. You will be surprised how little it has to be off to make your cake lopsided. And even after I level my cakes, it's still not always perfectly level by the time I'm done. It's a big challenge to me. All right, next we're going to put 1 cup of the cream frosting, and you can just guess if you want to, but I always measure, and that way I'm sure I've got the same amount between each layer of cake. And so I'm just going to dump this out in the middle, and then I will spread it out. But I'm going to use my larger spatula to help spread it to the edge. Now, I have this turntable, and it will make a huge difference when you try to frost a layered cake, well, any cake that you're really trying to frost. And it will make a huge difference. You know what? That spread pretty thin, and I usually have some frosting left over. I might just put one more little glob. So I'll have to remember to add that extra glob to the other layer. So if you put too much frosting between the layers, the cake tends to want to fall apart when it's sliced and cut. So you don't want those layers too thick, but you also want to have ample amount of that cream cheese frosting between each layer. All right, now we're going to do the next layer. And in spite of everything I did, and you saw how strategically I measured how much batter went in each cake pan, I still have one of them that is less, it's a little thinner, just a little thinner. Now I'm going to also level this one off. And I just get down, I level with it. And then this is a bread knife is what this is. And it's got a serrated edge. So be sure you're using a knife with a long serrated edge. But yeah, this one was a little, and it didn't seem to rise as much. I do have to, I don't have two ovens. So I am baking in the same oven. And that could be part of the problem is one of the cakes has to be on the top, a little closer to the heat, I think. So this may have been the one. I honestly don't know which one. All right, that looks fairly level. So now I'm going to add a cup and a glob. Y'all like that? A cup and a glob of the frosting. To uh-oh, got a mess here. I'm gonna have to stop and get paper towel or wet. I've got frosting on my hand, on my spatula. As I said, pretty good at getting a mess wherever I can when I'm in the kitchen. I could probably never be a professional chef. I know how to do it, but I'm not very neat about it sometimes. Oh, I forgot. I'm supposed to be measuring it. You can see I got my brain got. I'm gonna put that back in there, and hopefully doesn't have too much carrot cake on it. All right, so we're gonna put on the second layer. I'm going to spread out a cup, And again, you want to try your best not to get any of the crumbs in the frosting. Okay, so now the cake is completely covered. There's a little camo trick I like to make to dress it up. And that's, I like to take this little spatula and I just start at the bottom. I'm going to do it on the back side. But I start at the bottom and then I just spin the cake. And as I spin the cake, it makes a little groove in there. And then I move up just a hair. Let me see if I can get this around front for you to see. And then I just hold it level and spin it again. And it makes another little row. And then one more. I hope you can see this. I really can't see what I'm doing though I usually hold it around here and go this way. So, but you can see now that there's like 3 little layers, rows there. And then I do the same thing to the top. I start on the top and I just spin my cake to there. And then I come in about 1 inch and I do that again. And then one more right in the middle. And then the final thing I do to my carrot cake is I add pecan halves spaced around about every inch or so, all the way around the top of the cake. I add pecan halves. I think it usually takes about 15. Ta-da, cake is done. And there's just enough frosting in there left for me to put it with Rod's little cake tops, cake crumbs. The other thing I like to do is I'll clean up my cake plate by Well, our carrot cake is done and it's just looking gorgeous. I know it's delicious. I would love for you to try this recipe. It's so easy. I know if you make it in 3 layers, that might get it a little more complicated, but let me tell you, you can make it in a 9x13 pan. You will just need to increase the baking time a little bit and check for doneness with a toothpick, but it will taste just as good in a 9x13 pan as it will in a 3-layer cake. This just makes a lot more elegant cake for special occasions, and I'm excited to share this with my sister for her birthday. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful for you, and I hope to see you the next time I'm in my kitchen, on my porch, or in my garden.